Welcome back to the final segment of the night on Pivotal Change. And we have had a wonderful conversation with Richard Flint. And we talked about so much. And there's going to be just a single piece that I want to really pluck out and talk about. And when we talk about in the past of having really trying to make influence among your teams, influence among your people, you have to do something that you heard tonight, and that is give permission. Now, there are various ways of giving permission, and in the past, we've talked about giving yourself permission to go ahead and risk and achieve and do and be disciplined. But we're also going to talk about giving permission to other people on your team. So that's the part I'm going to focus on tonight. And I want to share a little bit of a story and journey from my law enforcement experience. So, many years ago, back in law enforcement, I was in charge of the SWAT team. I had over a decade of SWAT experience, and I was a SWAT team leader, which was in charge of planning and executing all of the tactical missions, everything that was high risk, coordinating all the training, and orchestrating the people that were selected, and of course, doing the missions on the team. Whole ton of work, whole ton of pressure, and really high liability, high risk situation. But during my 12 years in law enforcement, I completed a lot of leadership training, some of it very elite through the FBI, some international leadership academies, and I was able to do a 3-week live on site course that taught me so much. And in that time, I learned what I now have boiled down to giving permission and how important that is in life and in on teams. So, one of the things that I want to emphasize is that if I do not give the proper commissions, that potentially not just property and not just prison sentences, but actual lives are on the line inside of high risk SWAT missions. So, one specific mission, this is one of my earlier times planning a mission as the actual team leader. We had a suspect who was a pretty bad dude. He'd been arrested 5 or 6 times, several felonies, and our undercover drug unit was working operations with him and had been buying large amounts of drugs from him, and he was always armed with a handgun. So, felon in possession of a handgun, and we also had the additional charges of he had violence in his past. This was going to be a SWAT mission. We need to go in there, get the bad guy. His arrest warrants were ready, and there's probably even extra evidence in the home. So when we go to plan this mission, I go through and I start gathering resources, leaning on my team and their areas of expertise, getting recognizance and getting scopes of the situation and the people and the players involved, doing secret drive-bys to get film and videos of the property so that we can make our approach and then our execution of the mission as safe as possible inside of dangerous circumstances. Now, I realize that not every team is playing for table stakes of high-risk life and death scenarios potentially, and of course, if everything is well planned and goes well, those get taken off the table really quick. But inside of this mission, we had the rare benefit and blessing to have 3 officers who, within about the last 7 months, had actually been to and inside this home. We don't normally have the benefit of getting eyes that fresh into a home so that we can know a portion or all of the layout of the home. So we go and I contact the 2 officers that have been there 5 months ago and 7 months ago and get the best layout that I can. The third officer, who was there just a matter of weeks ago, was working a injury collision and could not respond to the briefing right on time to help me plan. So I figured I had 2 guys with eyes on the scene. I'm going to go ahead and roll with the best information that I have at the time. Pushing on, we could not do the actual briefing and assign all the roles, make sure everybody knows their responsibilities before we hit the road and go operate and execute this mission. So finally, that last guy shows up. Here's the important part about the last guy on the team, and I'm just going to call him Johnny for the sake of anonymity. So Johnny shows up, and he's actually the newest member of the team. He had just passed all of his certifications. He'd been training with the team for several months. He'd been going along on missions, but he's basically our equipment guy, our helper, our assistant, and he's not allowed to go in and get the bad guy, so to speak. This was his first mission going through the door. He was very nervous and excited because this is ultimately what we're doing, getting the worst of the worst. So in the back of the room, I can see Johnny as we start the briefing, kind of looking around the room, observing, and I'm going through the details of how we're going to approach the home at this angle. We're going to attack this corner with our equipment. Then we're going to go up here, hit the doorway, and we're going to proceed from here on out. Well, he looks around and continually starts to scan the room with a confused look on his face, and I am reading the look of like, does nobody know? Does nobody know? And so what he finally did is he slowly raised his hand so I could see him from the back of the room. I said, Johnny, go ahead. What you got, sir? He goes, hey, Sarge, I don't know if anybody told you this, but they flipped the layout of their house. Man, I was just there a couple of weeks ago and they flipped their whole living room. And when I say they flipped their living room, I mean the door that we're getting ready to go in has a large piece of furniture, like some type of china cabinet or something like that. And then there's like a couch pushed up right next to it. And yeah, it goes in the living room. And yeah, we can get in, but we're going to have to really breach and fight and bang and kick to get our way inside that door. I just want to let you know that, Sarge. And this is a really pivotal point of the conversation because standard teams, especially the higher performing teams, they like rookies to just kind of sit there, observe, do your part, do your little grunt work, and be quiet and let us cool guys that have been around for a while do all the work. But that was not the culture that I was bringing to the team, and some of my leaders before me tried to eliminate that from the team. He had a voice also, and he actually had unique information. So because he had the permission to raise his hand, I got new and fresh information. So I call a timeout. We go back in the meeting. I ask him all of this information, and he confirms with me, yes, that's the layout. So we flip the whole plan 180 degrees, coming from another angle on another street, another corner, another doorway. We've got to work through some woods. We're going to approach the house, and we're going to breach this door over here on the entire other side of the residence. Got to reposition my snipers, reposition my patrol teams, block different intersections. A little bit of effort to put in it, and then resubmit the plan to the assistant chief to get signed off on. After we do all of this, we go hit the house and everything goes flawlessly. The bad guy was, in fact, lying asleep in bed with a handgun about 2 steps away from him. We'll call it 7 or 8 feet away on a dresser. And he could have lunged and grabbed, and if he would have gotten to that pistol, he would have presented a perfect and clear shot straight to the door that we were going to try to enter. Generally, that would not be a problem because there's always angles that people can take. But we'd have been banging and fighting and pushing our way through that door while possibly receiving fire. Here's the scariest side. While we operate with lots of equipment, we have ballistic shields and ballistic vests and helmets. None of that is truly bulletproof. And the first person through the door that would have been banging and banging was my very best friend in law enforcement. And he and the people behind him would have likely been the ones shot. So in that day, the fact that he had permission to raise his hand as the new guy, as the green operator on the team, and say, hey, Sarge, you don't have all of the information or accurate information, literally saved lives. The bad guy was shocked. The operation went smoothly. He went to jail, did his 15 to 20 years for all of the bad things that he had done, and peace was restored in that little neighborhood in Paducah, Kentucky. Now, in my leadership philosophy, I clearly articulate that I give you permission. In fact, it is my expectation that if you find that I have incomplete information or inaccurate information, it is your charge to raise your hand and tell me. Had I not received great mentorship and influence from other people that I was receptive to and implemented that rule, possibly multiple people on the SWAT team could have been taken down that day, and one of them being my very best friend, whom I was in charge of sending through that door. So I thank people who have given the diligence to execute good plans and come up with systems and tactics and gear, and I thank people who have put me in the position to be able to lead through a situation like that. But when it comes down to it, if you are not giving permissions to your people, you are missing out on major parts of your operation. Once again, I'll reemphasize, it is not always life and death. It is very rarely, if ever, for more people in this world to ever do a high-risk search warrant. But there could be the key component to your workflow. You have this choke point, you have this obstacle you can't get over, and somebody doesn't feel that they have permission to raise their hand and say, what if we try it this way? What if we use this software? What if we buy this other tool? What if we just rotate the personnel because Sally's really good at this and Jimmy's not so good, but he's better over here? If we just swap roles, what if the system goes better? You must give your people permission. Now, you can put boundaries on that. Those are some of my other principles of leadership, and these pillars leadership are very important on the foundation of servant leadership. But as long as they approach you respectively, they're not just doing it in a whining and complaining capacity, but they offer solutions. When they have the permissions, you can tell people that you can go this far but no farther, or you have the expectation to rise up and wave your hand and protect lives and save lives that day. The other thing that you have to do is you have to carry that outside of your business place. You have to carry that into your home. Do your children know that they have permission to respectfully challenge you on something that they don't understand, or challenge you on something that, hey, Dad, you keep saying this about technology, but there's a new app out and we can do this and our family can be better if we just download this app. You got to give permission for people to speak up. Does your spouse have permission to speak up and say, hey, something's not working, or hey, something's really going well? Can we do more of it? If people feel that they don't have permissions, and they do not know they have permissions unless it is articulated by you, the leader, you may believe they have permission because of the culture and the methodology that you just go live your daily life or operate your daily business by. But unless you articulate the permission out loud, they don't know they have it. And more so, you should write it down and deliver it so that you can be held accountable and they can be held accountable by these permissions that are supposed to govern themselves. So think about everything you heard from Richard today about all of the various components to dealing with emotional baggage and searching yourself and growing as a better person, and apply this as well to give yourself permission and those in your life permission. If you do that, you're going to have unlocked just one more door and pathway to ease your path to success along the road of obstacles. I'm Ryan Kahn of Pivotal Change and with CS Business Consulting, and I challenge each and every one of you to go out into the world and see the change and be the change. And we'll be right back next time on the next episode of Pivotal Change.